Hi, Mrs. Yanarella here.
And this is Mrs. Malloy.
And we're here with episode 5 of Teacher Talk Tuesday. And this is our final episode. And we are so delighted that you've joined us on this adventure through our National Reading Month. And we hope that you learned a lot along the way. We love sharing these tips with you. Today, we want to talk about writing. We want to talk about incorporating writing into your daily routine at home and how we can make that connection from home to school with our writing and encouraging our readers to make that connection between reading and writing because there's such a strong bond there. And when we support our readers, we're supporting our writers and vice versa. So today I just want to encourage you at home to think about making lists. Kids love making lists, whether they're making a list of things that they want to get at Target, or a list of sports equipment that they need for their game on Saturday, or a list for the grocery store. Kids love making lists, so encourage your children to make a list. If you're heading out to run errands, sit down together, make a list. See if they can sound out different things or point to different words around your house and encourage them to write that word on the list. Talk about numbering lists. It really does help them identify things around them, but it also really just practices sounding things out in a different and fun way. So I love incorporating lists into your daily, especially your weekend routine as you head out for the weekend. I also want to tell you how wonderful it is to tell your children to write notes, whether it's a thank you note, just a you matter note. Not only does it support our SEL and encourage kindness, but it also is great practice for your children to write something natural and really just put their emotions out there to say thank you for being a great friend, or thank you for being an awesome teacher, or after a special occasion, thanking people for gifts. It's great practice having children write notes and also their addresses as well. We find that it's very surprising how many children don't know their address or how to address an envelope. So encouraging those basic skills is always a win. In addition, I want to talk about for our older kids, journaling. I know that at home, my daughter and I, we love to write notes to one another in a journal at night. She writes one to me before bed, and then she always wakes up to a new entry in the morning for me. It's a way for her to practice writing all by herself and then practice reading my entries the next day. And I find too that it's really fun. We look forward to sharing that bond with one another every night and every morning. When they journal, they could write things to themselves. They could write messages to somebody else. They could also read something, and you can encourage them to journal to reflect on what they're reading, and then you can read it later, and you can do a response as well. There's just so many ways that we can incorporate writing into our reading routines. Also for my older kids, when you're reading something that they've written, you always want to remember to ask them to reread it. I always say to my students, did you read it again? Did you make sure that you read it twice? Because they realize that when you reread something that you've written, just natural things pop up and they say, oh, that doesn't sound right. So I always say to my writers, make sure you read it twice, because they figure out that things have to sound right. So I always ask my friends, stop, does it sound right? And then keep moving. And I find that even that simple reminder helps them start to think about the writing process and that revision and that editing piece to make sure that it sounds like a cohesive piece of writing. So those are some tips across the board, K to 5, that you can really use with all of your children at home.
Excellent tips, Mrs. Yanarella. So on my end, I wanted to talk about, I'm still going to talk about books, but these are wordless books. They just have pictures in them. And so often in the library, a student will pick up one of these and they're like, I don't want it, there's no words. But these are great books for telling a story. So what you do with your child is you look at the illustrations, and the illustrations tell the story, and you can encourage the child to put the story into their own words. And there's no right or wrong answer to that because they're interpreting the illustrations. So it's a great way for them to be creative. It's a great way for them to look at illustrations and make connections with the illustrations and to interpret what the illustrator and author wanted to say. So while students do not like to pick up these books, when I do a read aloud with them and they tell the story through the illustrations, they love it. So I encourage wordless books to allow the student, the child, to make the story in their head and use vocabulary to tell the story.
I love that idea. And one more thing that I think would be so fun to add to that
Okay.
is to give your students, and at home especially, a little, even if it's just a little bin of supplies. Kids love novelty. So even if you throw pens in there, new markers, anything with a fuzzy top they get excited about. So if you give them their own little writing basket and you change it up every now and then, you would find that they really get excited about writing. And the adventure just becomes more to them because they feel like it's new and thrilling. So maybe you could incorporate that as you read your wordless picture books together.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for listening.
We would love any feedback you can provide us on these weekly videos we did, and we really hope you enjoyed them.